Chapter 1. The plane made a successful emergency landing, and the entire crew was celebrating their survival in the break room. At that moment, my boyfriend, Ryan, stood across from me, pulling a necklace from his pocket, his gaze intense. This necklace, he had bought it a few days ago, and I had accidentally seen the receipt. It wasn't cheap, though today was my birthday. Hadn't he promised not to make anything public? My heart pounded like a drum, nervous yet filled with anticipation. But then, I saw his gaze move past me, towards someone behind me, Roxana. When the plane went off course, I was terrified. I was afraid I wouldn't get the chance to say something. On his usually cold face, there was a rare flicker of tension. His voice wasn't loud, but it made everyone around hold their breath. And I seemed to forget how to breathe. My chest felt tight, aching with a mix of sourness and pain. The plane had gone off course, and we had been in a life-threatening situation. In that moment of life and death, my boyfriend's thoughts hadn't been about me. And now, he lightly pursed his lips, carefully choosing his words. "Will you be my girlfriend?" But the words weren't directed at me, the one who had been with him for 5 years. I remembered that Ryan disliked people who were unprofessional. He had once criticized me, saying that my posture when opening the emergency exit was wrong. In extreme conditions, you could fail to open the door properly and endanger the lives of all the passengers. His tone had been stern, but my heart had pounded excitedly. There was something so captivating about a serious man. So today, when I risked everything to open the escape hatch, it wasn't just because of my professional duty. I wanted to earn his approval. But reality is cruel. He hadn't noticed the terrified Roxana, her legs weak, blocking the emergency exit, crying uncontrollably. He had even carried her out of the break room himself and publicly confessed his feelings. How could he be so hypocritical? He must have been planning to break up with me for a long time. Chapter 2. Roxana, the new flight attendant, was originally in charge of opening the cabin door. Who would have thought that she'd collapse by the door, doing nothing but cry? Because her actions severely hindered the passengers' evacuation, I had to send her to the break room. No doubt she resents me for that, because now, with tearful eyes, she gazes at Ryan, shyly lowering her head. Then, she glances at me with a look of triumph before nodding demurely. "I'd love to." "Congratulations. Congratulations." The room erupts into applause, and everyone is smiling happily. Everyone. Except for me, because I've just been cheated on and dumped so publicly. I can only hang my head in humiliation. A woman's intuition is usually spot on, and deep down, I had already sensed Ryan's growing indifference. We've been together for 5 years, and gradually, he stopped kissing me. The real alarm bells rang when a new flight attendant joined the company. She was sweet-looking, and the key detail, she had the same last name as our company's owner. Some colleagues had whispered rumors, wondering if Roxana's shortened internship period meant she had powerful connections. I brushed off their gossip, but Ryan must have taken it seriously. He began to approach Roxana deliberately, teaching her many things, step by step. I didn't understand why. When he already had a girlfriend, he'd go out of his way to help another woman. His explanation? One day, we might be flying on the same crew. The stronger our colleagues are, the safer we'll be. Such a lie. I stayed quiet, not exposing him. In my memory, Ryan was someone who hated dealing with trouble, even with me, his girlfriend. He never bothered to teach me much. He probably forgot his own words. Teaching safety procedures to flight attendants is such a hassle. Turns out, sometimes the hassle goes away when the person changes. Chapter 3. People only leave when they've collected enough disappointment. Later on, I wasn't sure if Ryan didn't care about my feelings anymore or if he was trying to force me to break up with him. He always made sure our flight schedules were different. And then, when I called him, he'd say he was exhausted and going to sleep. He'd hang up quickly, and I had no choice but to send him a text, telling him I'd bought that model he loved so much. I was full of excitement, thinking it would make him happy, but he never replied. Later, I saw Roxana's post on her social media. Her caption read, "Watching a great movie with someone important." The picture showed 2 hands intertwined. How romantic. It was the movie I'd been wanting to watch with Ryan for a long time. But unfortunately, he never liked romance films. When I zoomed in, the mole on the ring finger of the larger hand stood out like a glaring truth. How ridiculous. The man who, just a moment ago, told his girlfriend he was too tired and needed to sleep, was now watching a movie with another woman. After finishing my flight, I wanted to confront Ryan. As I packed my luggage, I caught sight of that dress. I remembered that back when I was in my final year of college. Just before my internship, I had wanted to buy a dress for my interviews. When Ryan found out, he gave me one as a gift. At the time, I didn't know much about his financial situation. It wasn't until after graduation, when his roommate joked with me, "Zoe, when you're flying in first class one day, don't kick Ryan to the curb. He lived on instant noodles for 3 months just to buy you that dress. He didn't even splurge on the cup noodles." That's when I realized, this fool only had 400 yuan a month to live on, but he'd still bought me an expensive dress. He had even borrowed money to get it. My eyes stung. He used to want to give me the best of everything. So, maybe I should give him one more chance. Chapter 4. I arranged for the 3 of us to be on the same flight. And before departure, I hinted to him, I want to have a relationship in the open, under the sun. His gaze was dark and unreadable. But in the end, the answer became very clear. I gave up completely, determined to force this person, along with all the beautiful memories, out of my mind. What hurt the most was that while he had been with me, Ryan always used workplace relationships affect performance as an excuse not to go public with our relationship. Yet, after going public with Roxana, he was anything but low-key. He thoughtfully brought her breakfast and delivered it to her room. And, of course, I happened to run into them as I was heading to the restaurant. I didn't even bother looking at him and just walked straight ahead. To think that in the past, whenever I was dealing with jet lag and wanted to sleep in, I'd ask him to bring me breakfast. He was always too scared of being seen and never agreed. My heart shattered into pieces, and I never wanted to see him again. Yet he hurried after me, his expression calm as he said, "Let's talk." I didn't see the point in talking, nor did I accept his apology. From start to finish, I couldn't understand where I had lost to Roxana. Unable to hold back, I asked, "Ryan, do you actually want to date Roxana? Or is it that you want to date the boss's daughter?" Hearing this, he was visibly taken aback. He looked at me deeply, a trace of helplessness in his eyes. "Zoe, next month is the promotion exam. I don't want to be stuck in the cockpit forever. Just a small character being ordered around." I was confused. "With your skills, do you really need to use connections to become a captain?" He clearly had the ability to get promoted on his own, but unexpectedly, he gave a faint, defeated smile and sighed. "Zoe, you don't know where my ambitions lie. You can't compete with Roxana's family connections." My heart sank. I looked at him, and the person standing before me felt like a stranger. He was no longer the young man who spent all day in the library, believing that knowledge could change his fate. He had started weighing pros and cons, becoming an adult who treated the people around him as stepping stones, while everyone has the freedom to pursue their own path and choose their lifestyle. I no longer loved him. It was hard to find the right words of farewell. I turned and walked away without looking back. Chapter 5. That evening, the crew received a notification that the plane was to fly back without passengers. Unfortunately, we encountered severe turbulence again. The flight attendants were in chaos, and Roxana was crying and screaming, "Ryan, I'm so scared," as she tried to pull open the cockpit door. How can someone be this brainless? I went to stop her, telling her not to disturb the captain while he worked. She slapped me to the ground. "You've spoken to Ryan. You're jealous of me, aren't you?" This was the first time Roxana had been so blunt. So, she knew everything. I got up from the floor and commanded the other flight attendants to follow protocol. They hesitated, watching Roxana and me, frozen in place. Then, Roxana went mad, demanding they tie me up. "Zoe's bullying me. You guys help me teach her a lesson, and I'll tell my dad when we get back. He'll give you all a raise." So she really is the boss's daughter? Some of them looked tempted, actually reaching for a rope, but I stopped them with just a glance. "You want a raise? Well, you'll have to survive first. Are you sure you can operate the equipment and execute the emergency procedures correctly if you tie me up? Hearing this, they immediately flew back to their posts. Roxana shot me a venomous glare. She better hope I don't survive. Because if I do, I'll make sure she never steps foot on a plane again. Chapter 6. At 3 a.m., the plane veered off course once more. Inside the cabin, everyone was filled with despair. Roxana was crying and throwing a tantrum, screaming that she wanted to go home. She even demanded that I open the cabin door so she could jump with a parachute. At this moment, jumping would be suicide. She had absolutely no flight attendant training. Her crying was giving me such a headache that I wished I could tie her up and gag her. Ryan was out of his mind too. He opened the intercom from the cockpit, giving no instructions, just trying to comfort Roxana. Roxana, don't cry. We'll make it back alive. How could he be so distracted in a life-or-death situation? I couldn't stand this ridiculous couple anymore, so I grabbed the intercom and shouted at the cockpit. Captain, send an emergency radio distress signal. The boss's daughter is on board. If we keep drifting, we'll run out of fuel. Request mid-air refueling immediately, and clear the entire flight path. Also, request fighter jets to guide us back. I was scared I might die here, so I yelled everything I could think of. As soon as I finished speaking, someone quietly cried. The cost of that, headquarters would never agree. Clearing the entire flight path isn't something we can decide on our own. We're going to die, aren't we? More sobbing filled the cabin, and the cockpit remained silent. Could the captain have passed out? My fingers trembled with fear. Just then, Roxana ran over, seizing the opportunity to grab the intercom. Ryan, are you okay? I'm so scared. Sob, sob. My heart skipped a beat. Suddenly, the captain's deep voice came through. Flight attendant, what you mentioned has already been sent by the co-pilot. Don't be afraid, everyone. I will do my best to land this plane safely. Please trust me. Each word was firm and powerful. For the moment, I felt a bit of relief. Chapter 7. 10 minutes later, the grief still hadn't dissipated. Headquarters sent a message, JK 1009. All flight paths are being cleared, and all rescue planes have been dispatched. Please make sure to return safely. That one sentence made me burst into tears. At the same time, the flight attendants started gathering around Roxana, chattering excitedly. Roxana, the company really sent help. They're actually clearing all the flight paths. Of course! Roxana is the boss's daughter. A proper heiress. Exactly. Much better than some people who can only give useless orders. Contemptuous glances shot in my direction, as if I had done something shameful. I was baffled. In the face of power, so many people had chosen to abandon their dignity. I couldn't be bothered to argue with them and sat silently in my seat. But Roxana wasn't done with me. She lifted her chin smugly, like an arrogant princess. Calmly, she ordered, "Tie her up. Gag her mouth." The flight attendants eagerly pinned me down, tying me up like a crab. Shut up, head flight attendant. From now on, this place is under Miss Roxana's command. Chapter 8. I lost track of time, but eventually, Ryan's excited voice came over the intercom. Roxana, we've reached the designated flight path, and the plane is preparing to descend. And Roxana, don't be scared. His tone was tender and affectionate. Roxana basked in the attention, immediately grabbing the intercom to respond. Ryan, my legs are weak. You'll have to carry me down. Everyone around sighed in envy. I had no interest in watching their brainless behavior. I quietly shifted, trying to loosen the ropes, but they had tied me too tightly. After the plane came to a stop, Roxana even ordered them to throw me into the break room. Annoying people should stay in here and reflect. No way! I desperately kicked the door, trying to get someone's attention, but I could only watch helplessly as they all rushed out, one by one. Later, the cockpit door opened, and the captain and Ryan came out. The captain wasn't in great shape, stumbling as he made his way outside. He didn't notice me. As for Ryan, when he went to pick up Roxana from her seat, he clearly saw me, but he pretended not to. My heart sank into despair as I watched them walk away, disappearing from sight. But in the next moment, I saw someone familiar. He rushed over, tears streaming down his face as he untied me. "Miss, I'm sorry I'm late." I shook my head and took his arm as we left the cabin. Down below, I saw a large crowd gathered. Among them, Ryan's face was full of regret, his expression complicated as he looked at me. Beside him, Roxana didn't dare to lift her head. Chapter 9. I didn't want to make a scene, so I quietly told Uncle Nestor, "Let everyone go rest." But he refused. As soon as his feet hit the ground, he angrily yelled at the middle-aged man who had come over, nodding and bowing. "Investigate this thoroughly. I want to see who was so vicious as to tie up a colleague in the break room." Such cruelty! The middle-aged man seemed to know Roxana, and he looked a bit uneasy, trying to laugh it off. In an emergency, there's bound to be some irrational behavior. It might have been a misunderstanding. Roxana, seeing that the man was siding with her, immediately puffed up her chest and defended herself. "Yes, I thought Zoe was in a bad mental state and was afraid she'd hurt herself, so I tied her up." The others chimed in. "Yes, we were just doing it for her own good." "For my own good?" I stared at them coldly and said, "If you're so determined to lie, let's check the black box." "Fine. Check it." Roxana, stubborn as ever, even feigned being wronged. "Just because you're the head flight attendant doesn't mean you should throw your weight around and falsely accuse us." "Throwing my weight around?" I scoffed. "Weren't you the one claiming to be the boss's daughter? Who's really throwing their weight around?" My words were like a bomb, causing everyone's expressions to change. Uncle Nestor frowned and immediately arranged for someone to retrieve the black box. Ryan, however, volunteered. "I'll go." I had no objections, and the middle-aged man nodded. Ryan hurried off. When he came back, he said, "The black box is damaged." It seemed he had chosen Roxana after all. At the same time, the middle-aged man made the final decision. "Everyone is tired. Go rest for now. We'll investigate this matter later." Uncle Nestor was so angry his mustache bristled. Once we landed, they weren't afraid anymore. I told Uncle Nestor to go ahead, assuring him he didn't need to worry about me. He looked back at me 3 times before finally leaving. As I was walking away, Roxana deliberately bumped into me, her expression arrogant. "I thought you had some serious connections. All bark and no bite." I bumped her right back. "Why don't you try me?" Chapter 10. I had my own plan. I asked Uncle Nestor to look into the background of the middle-aged man. He was the CEO's secretary, Kevin. What I didn't know was if the CEO was a principled man. If Roxana really was Nestor's daughter, then wouldn't Nestor's people have to be taken down? The higher-ups organized a debriefing meeting to discuss this flight's events. Nestor came in person. He focused solely on the cause of the incident, completely avoiding any mention of Roxana tying me up. Of course, he's the boss. Even the CEO has to answer to him. His daughter tying someone up? That's nothing. Honest people never get justice. I slammed my hands on the table and stood up, addressing everyone present. "Is it possible for a black box to be damaged when the plane hasn't crashed?" Everyone exchanged looks, but no one spoke up. Finally, the captain muttered softly, "No, it's not possible," but his voice was quickly drowned out by the CEO's cough. Seeing that I wouldn't let this go, Roxana began to play the victim. "Head flight attendant. I only did it because you seemed too agitated. If you're upset, well, you can tie me up too." Before she could finish, Ryan eagerly jumped in as her protector. He gave me a cold look. "Zoe, it was wrong of me to let you down, but you shouldn't take it out on Roxana." That absurd comment made it seem like I was overreacting. Furious, I sneered, You're not even worth it." The room fell silent. Nestor gave us all a meaningful look before focusing on me. His tone was gentle, but his words weren't. "Right or wrong, we can't just take your word for it. The black box is damaged. And that's that. If you're not satisfied, you can resign." Ha! In this world, do people without connections have to swallow injustice and suffer in silence? I met Nestor's gaze directly and asked, "Are you really going to use your power to bully someone like me?" Nestor smiled but said nothing. Roxana seized the moment and added, "If you kneel and apologize, I can be magnanimous and forgive you." Really? I feigned weakness, acting like I was scared of losing my job. I turned to Nestor. If I apologize, I won't have to quit. He thought about it briefly, not wanting to embarrass Roxana, and nodded. Perfect. I took out my phone and made a call. Mom, someone's bullying me. Chapter 11. Ryan once said that I couldn't compete with Roxana's connections. He didn't know my real strength was competing with my mom. Uncle Nestor is a senior executive at another airline. As the saying goes, what happens on the east side doesn't affect the west side. So, people give him respect, but not total respect. But my mom? That's a different story. Originally, I never wanted to be that spoiled rich second generation who threw their weight around. The most I ever did was ask my mom to help Ryan when he was stressed about the deputy captain position. I remember my mom said at the time, "Sweetheart, if he needs me to pull strings for a deputy captain position, then this man doesn't have enough talent." Sadly, I was so blinded by love that I only focused on how hard things were for Ryan. Looking back now, resources are important, but for technical positions, it's the skill that matters. Take the captain we flew with on this trip. He worked his way up from the bottom. If Ryan was willing to put his heart into it, his future could have been bright. Chapter 12. I was lost in thought when Roxana sneered. "Oh, calling your mom. Are we? And who is your mom? Anyway, last time you sent some old man here. He was all bluster, but nothing more. Stop putting on airs and wasting our time." When the little princess spoke, of course, people had to act. The CEO glanced at me and immediately announced, "Zoe, is it? You're fired. Now pack your things and leave." He promptly called in security, who were ready to drag me out. Most of the people in the room looked at me like they were watching a show. How humiliating. I waved the guards away and pushed them off. I can walk out on my own. Just then, the door swung open. My mom walked in, flanked by two burly men, and shouted in a commanding voice, "I'd like to see who dares to bully my daughter." Others didn't recognize my mom, but Nestor did. His face turned pale, and he immediately stood up. But Roxana, clueless as ever, ran up and pointed at my mom, demanding that security throw her out. My mom has quite the temper. She grabbed Roxana by the shoulder and slapped her twice. Hard. "I'm educating you on behalf of your father. And what gives you the right?" Roxana was stunned, staggering back a few steps, helplessly looking at Nestor. At that moment, Nestor dropped to his knees, sliding toward my mom. "Darling, I'm sorry. I didn't know she was your daughter." My mom ignored him, walking straight to Ryan, her presence commanding, and asked coldly, "Can the black box be fixed?" Ryan, knowing when to submit, quickly nodded. "It can be." The CEO, no stranger to power, didn't know who my mom was but quickly got up and offered her his seat. "Please, madam, have a seat." My mom didn't sit. Everyone else immediately stood up, almost in unison. It was amusing. I watched my mom with admiration. It's great to have both money and power. The black box wasn't damaged at all. Everything that happened with Roxana ordering people to tie me up was replayed in full detail. My mom was furious and demanded that everyone involved be fired on the spot. But I thought that was unnecessary, mainly because I hadn't gotten my revenge yet. So I quickly spoke up. "Let's not go too far. Just handle the situation fairly." My mom gave me a surprised look, not quite understanding my plan. But Roxana still had some spirit left. Seeing that her father couldn't outmatch my mom, she decided to storm out on her own. "Don't try to scare me with being fired. I'll quit. I'll fire all of you first." How ridiculous. For once, I had the upper hand, and I wasn't about to let go. I let my full power show. "If you dare quit, take your dad with you and get out, and go starve in the streets." I knew my mom had the power to make this happen. She doted on me, and without hesitation, shot Nestor a warning look. Nestor, being an experienced veteran of the game, knew the advantages of relying on others. Immediately, he grabbed Roxana by the head and forced her to apologize to me. He even threatened her. "You're the one who made the mistake. If you don't repent, don't blame me for cutting off your cards." Roxana was stunned. She couldn't believe that her doting father would force her to apologize. crying hysterically. She ran toward Ryan, trying to grab his hand for support. But Ryan wasn't going to help her either. He subtly moved out of her reach. Heartbroken, Roxana, with no other choice, stiffened her neck and begrudgingly apologized to me. I thought about letting it go, not wanting to push her too far. But my mom wasn't satisfied. She let out a cold snort. Who was it that said you'd kneel down and apologize? Roxana's face turned pale. Nestor, however, was quick to act. He signaled the two bodyguards, who firmly pressed his precious daughter down on her knees. I couldn't help but think, when you have money, you can really do whatever you want. Chapter 13. After Roxana knelt and apologized, the rest of the room fell silent. Terrified, my mom, possibly understanding my intent, asked the CEO to give a reasonable punishment without firing anyone. He nodded repeatedly and deducted some money from those who had wronged me. Then, with a beaming smile, he cautiously asked if that was enough. His demeanor was completely different from the impatient way he had wanted to have security escort me out earlier. I nodded, maintaining a dignified tone, and said, "The punishment isn't the goal. The main thing is to create a harmonious working environment for all the flight attendants." At that moment, the room erupted into enthusiastic applause. As if on cue, everyone's facial expressions were perfectly controlled. It made me feel sick. After this incident, I transferred to another department and stopped flying. As an only child, my mom had never agreed with me becoming a flight attendant, but I had been stubborn, wanting to stay close to Ryan. In the past, I'd hidden my wealthy background, hoping to find someone who loved me for who I was. Now, all I wanted was to smoothly take over my mom's business and settle my scores. After being promoted to management, I implemented strict training protocols. I was determined not to allow unqualified flight attendants to work. Later, I deliberately assigned Ryan, Roxana, and her group of sycophants to the same flight. I didn't need to say much after that. Of course, I didn't have to. People in the workplace are smart. Previously, the flight attendants fawned over Roxana, hoping to curry favor and gain benefits. Now that they knew I was the true heiress, they were sure to find ways to flatter me instead. And wasn't my arrangement clear enough? Soon enough, the flight attendants began subtly but deliberately excluding Roxana. They assigned her the dirty and tiring tasks, bossing her around. During this time, Ryan came to see me once, but not to plead for Roxana. He wanted to win me back. He wore a shirt I had given him and brought a bouquet of my favorite flowers. Kneeling on one knee, "Zoe, can I court you again?" "Of course not." I looked at him coldly, as if he were nothing but trash. "Ryan, do you really want to pursue me? Or are you just trying to pursue the boss's daughter?" "That's right. My mom owns all the airlines. Nestor is just a figurehead." When the plane went off course, and I said the boss's daughter was on board, Nestor couldn't have cleared the entire airspace. Everything happened because I was on that plane. My mom didn't hesitate to lose millions for me. Chapter 14. All feelings may be false, but my mom's love for me is real. I grew impatient listening to Ryan's explanation. He looked at me with sorrowful eyes, muttering softly, "Why did you hide your identity? I could have had both love and a promising future." I stepped back, creating distance between us. Maybe that gesture was too obvious in showing my disdain. I had always been warm and enthusiastic toward him before. The stark contrast was too much for him. He grabbed my hand, agitated, and began shouting, "I was sincere with you. Didn't you feel it? In college, wasn't I good enough for you? I starved for days just to buy you that dress. Do you even know how long I went without eating? Why did you have to test me like this? Some men are laughable. They can abandon you, leave you behind. But you're supposed to wait there, incapable of moving on." I was completely disgusted and told Ryan, "Let's part ways amicably. Don't make me lose all respect for you. I'll pay you back for that dress, tenfold." As I spoke, I immediately pulled out my phone and transferred the money. That was the final cut. He gave me a sorrowful look but, without hesitation, rejected the payment. "Why are you being so heartless? You know you still love me." I gave up trying to reason with this madman and turned to leave. He wasn't ready to give up. shouting after me, "Zoe, I'll become the Ryan who stands on his own again. You'll see." I shook my head. "I'm not waiting." Chapter 15. Ryan was always quick to act. He quit his job and went to apply at another airline. Little did he know, all the companies he applied to were owned by my mother. When she called me to ask, should I blacklist him? I thought for a moment. "I'm curious," I said. "Let's see how far he can go on his own." My mom chuckled. "Then we'll indulge my precious daughter's curiosity." "Thank you, Mom." After hanging up, I made several reform proposals in the company. The CEO approved them immediately. Meanwhile, Roxana stormed into my office. Her face twisted in anger. She knocked everything off my desk onto the floor in a fit of rage. "Zoe, you've gone too far. I only tied you up. I didn't kill you. Do you really need to go this far to target me? Did you force Ryan to quit? Did you make him break up with me? You have everything. So why do you have to take him too? This girl, her intelligence really has limits." I stared at her pitiful, unhinged state and laughed coldly. "Roxana, you knew who I was from the start, didn't you? You went after Ryan on purpose, didn't you? After my father died, my mom remarried Nestor." Looking at Roxana's age, it's clear she was born before my mom and Nestor got married. My mom doesn't know about her, but my mom once told me, "Sweetheart, everything your father and I own will go to you." She had the foresight to sign a prenuptial agreement. Therefore, my mom could ensure that Nestor wouldn't get a penny of her wealth. What I didn't understand was why Roxana came after me. How did she even know my identity? My mom had always been careful to keep Nestor from ever meeting me. That's how I was able to live a normal life without being recognized. And Nestor didn't know who I was either. I had thought Roxana had some sort of master plan. I even tried to lure her into revealing her intentions. "Tell me what you know, and I'll let you go." But instead, she broke down, crying her heart out. "Who knew who you were? My dad said his wife favored Ryan and that he might even be her son. And besides, Ryan was the one who came onto me. Your breakup has nothing to do with me. Why are you taking it out on me?" As Roxana unleashed her emotions, everything fell into place. Suddenly, it all made sense. I realized it must have been that time when my mom pulled some strings for Ryan that Nestor misunderstood. So, Nestor didn't even know if my mom's child was a son or a daughter. And Ryan and Roxana? They were both playing their own games, each scheming for their own ends. It's no wonder they broke up so quickly. As someone who sticks to my word, I told her, "You can resign now." But Roxana took an unexpected route. "I still want to be a flight attendant, and you better not keep targeting me. Stop putting me on flights with them. I want a promotion. I want to serve in first class." I looked at her, confused. Seeing that I didn't reply, she started shouting again. "My dad has been with your mom for so many years, and I never had a father figure growing up. Don't push me too far." Oh, I've never been the type to back down when someone gets tough with me. So I shot back. "You've had food and shelter all your life, and it was all thanks to my mom's money. If you're so desperate for fatherly love, why don't you take him back? After all, he's old now and doesn't have the charm to attract my mom anymore." Roxana was furious, grinding her teeth. "What do you take my father for?" I smirked. "What do you think? You. She couldn't come up with anything else, pointing at me and stammering you repeatedly. Foolish people always love finding ways to make their lives more difficult. With a wave of my hand, I assigned her to low-cost flights. The moment she said she wanted to serve in first class, I knew exactly what she was after. She wanted to stay on as a flight attendant to snag a rich man and turn the tables on me? Dream on! Chapter 16. Once Roxana was sent to work on budget flights. She couldn't stir up any trouble. She was miserable but didn't dare quit. I didn't feel a bit of sympathy and continued pushing for more company reforms. 5 years later, Ryan became a captain based on his own merits and remained single. When he appeared in front of me again, he was still as handsome as ever. He held 2 movie tickets, hoping to invite me to see a film. It was a typical romance movie, the sequel to one we had wanted to watch before. What was he trying to do? If 5 years ago, he had been willing to see that movie with me, if he had been willing to make our relationship public, maybe by now, we would have been married. But unfortunately, late affection is worth less than dirt, and even more so when that affection is mixed with ulterior motives. I advised him not to waste his time. You're a successful man now. Go find someone you like and live your life. He shook his head, his expression darkening. In the end, he even started crying. Zoe, I made one mistake. Do I really deserve a death sentence for that? I nodded. A good horse never goes back to graze on old pastures. Chapter 17. 2 more years passed, and my mom handed over all her businesses for me to manage. Nestor was not happy about it and constantly tried to sabotage me. My mom said, "Men can come and go, but I only have one daughter." With her support, I pushed him out of the company and she divorced him. But desperate and with nothing left, Nestor lost it. He attempted to have me kidnapped. I had already taken precautions, so there was no way he could succeed. What I didn't expect was for Ryan to suddenly show up and take a stab wound for me. Although the wound wasn't fatal, it ended his career. Why did he do it? Because of that stab, the kidnappers Nestor had hired were arrested, and they turned him in. Nestor was sentenced to 10 years in prison. As for Roxana, after her father lost all his money, she continued spending lavishly. Eventually, she ended up selling her body just to afford luxury goods. It was a sad outcome. I sent Ryan plenty of supplements and even offered him a management position in the company. To my surprise, he turned it down. He used to say, "You don't know where my journey will end." Now he says, "My journey ends with you." I smiled, blocked him, and left to travel abroad with my mom. Our journey has no end.